bringing this back to Disney, he was, one of the first who built that idea with Disneyland. But it's no longer the one park with all those attractions. There's a lot of them, but still, parents from all over the world have this dream, and their kids have this dream to one day go to Disneyland, right? Why? Because of the brand, not because there's something special about this roller coaster, and that's what makes the brand so valuable, and that's why it makes it so important for you to own the brand that you're building, because if you don't own it, you don't even have a brand.
No one makes magic in business like Disney. Join us as we hear from Disney cast members, influencers, and enthusiasts to uncover the secrets of what it takes behind the scenes to make Disney such a successful and well-loved brand. We will hear their journeys, inspirations, and have some good old-fashioned Disney fun along the way. So relax, pull up a chair, be our guest, and let's get down to bibbidi-bobbidi business. Hello, Andrei. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be on your show.
I'm so excited that you took some time to talk to me. For anyone who's listening and wondering why I have Andrei on the show, we had a little bit of a meet and greet beforehand, and I will let the biography that I have in the show notes speak for itself. But something that really stood out to me, Andrei, is on our intro call, you shared with me kind of a non-traditional journey of how you became a lawyer and now how you're helping brands protect their IP. And in my opinion, just like a good kind of Disney story, you pleasantly and surprised me because your motive was actually to help your father. Can you share with us this experience and how you feel like it shaped you today?
Yeah, sure. So back in the day, I was still living in Russia, and this is where I was born, and you can probably see it in my last name and my first name too. But so I was going to my first law school there, and really didn't see myself as a lawyer. Didn't want to become a lawyer. I was just attending a law school because I wanted to have a profession that would put money in my pocket. But beyond that, really had zero interest in what I was studying. And then one day, I think it was my year 3 or 2, can't remember exactly what year it was. But so I come home from school, and I see my dad is furious. And I'm like, well, what's going on? And it says, well, we just caught a radio station that used the song that I wrote, and they turned that into an ad for Samsung, and they didn't ask me permission. They didn't pay any royalties. And to add insult to injury, literally, when he called them and told them that they couldn't take his music and just use it without his permission, they told him to sit down, shut up, and be grateful that they were making his music even more famous, right? So he wrote music for over 160 movies. So he was a very, very well-known name in Russian music industry. And so when they told him that, if you knew my dad, you'd know right away it was the wrong way to approach that conversation. And so he told them, before he slammed down the phone and hung up, he told them, okay, I'll see you in court. And so he then realized that Russia at that time, was 1996, is just transitioned from the Soviet copyright laws, which really didn't exist, to free market copyright laws, which didn't really have any experienced lawyers who knew what to do with them. And so he asked me if I could help take this thing to court. And I knew, of course, absolutely nothing about copyright, about intellectual property, about what to do in a courtroom, like nothing. But I've always admired my dad. I've always, wanted to gain his approval. I wanted to be, useful. And so I said, sure, if you realize that I have no clue what the hell I'll be doing, I'll do it. And so I built that plane as I flew it, and took it to court, and then we lost. And then I remember this very well, because the reason we lost wasn't because I did something wrong. It was because, Russian courts back in the day were not the most uncorrupt government entities, so to speak. And so, but I remember I was sitting in my room reading this judgment over and over and trying to make any sense of it. And it just didn't make any sense to me. And so my dad came in the room and said, "So what are you going to do right now?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." Like I said all the right words, I did all the right things, and we got this, right? We got this nonsensical piece of paper. And this, the words that came out of his mouth next really was what shaped, the rest of my career. He said, "If you're not going to appeal this, you should quit your law school today and find yourself a different profession." And I'm like, okay. I didn't even know you could appeal, right? Like this is how well I was, studying back in the day. So we appealed it. We lost the appeal, and then I appealed it to one level, like below the highest court of the nation. And then we won, right? So it took me 2.5 years to win this case, and in the process, I learned everything I needed to know about copyrights, about intellectual property. But really, what I got out of it was this passion to help people who create something that hadn't existed before to not get ripped off, right? To help them fight those people who took all of this for granted, and who think that, just because it's out there, because it can be copied, because it can be downloaded, because it can be so easily manipulated, then why not? And because I saw firsthand what it does to people, to creators, when something they've created, their babies, that they're being used just by someone without even asking. So
Right.
that's
And
kind of the long version of that story.
but it's an impactful story, because often people can view IP and law as kind of a dry and technical process. There's not initially, especially those who are, kind of in the next level of their business, scaling it up or whatever, it's just, it feels like a thing that exists, right? But your experience through your father, with this infringement, it must have been a significant turning point. And I feel like it kind of shaped a more empathetic approach in your passion for helping others and their creative works. Like, how do you feel that experience helps you when you are, kind of working with someone who is on the other side now, because you had that personal journey that you went through, versus maybe someone else who may not have?
Well, you used the exact word that I was going to give you as an answer, right? It's personal, right? Even when they're not family, right? When they're not my dad, it's still personal, because I remember that feeling. And it's the same thing, when you're an entrepreneur who's got a dream to build a successful business. You come up with a brand in your garage, you come up with a product or a service in your garage, and you try to make it big, and you want to protect it. To me, it's almost the same thing. It's like, again, it's personal, because I know what you're going through, and I want to help you avoid all the bad stuff that could happen if you don't get it protected.
If you could go back to younger you when you were going through all those papers and wondering, what the heck am I going to do to help my dad? What advice would you have given your younger self, if you had to go back and redo that journey? Or would you redo it at all?
Oh, absolutely. It's been a rewarding career. I've enjoyed a big chunk of it, most of it, really. And I would probably. So there was a period in my life when I worked for the biggest international law firm in Russia, called Baker McKenzie. So, as I always say, my dad was my first and favorite client, right? And I've done a ton of work for him before I left Russia in 2007. And then 4 years before I left, I worked with this big law firm. And one big regret that I have is that I looked at their operation as a given, right? I only realized how great of a business it was when I moved to Canada, went through my second law school, and started and tried to build my own law firm, because I had this assumption that, if I'm a great lawyer, it's going to be very easy to build a successful law firm. And then I realized it's two completely different things. Having successful business and knowing your stuff, like they're different. And so when I was at that law firm, I only looked at it as, something very, very linear. Like, we got clients who need help. I know how to help them. I do the stuff that helps them, right? I never really spent any time learning from the partners, from the owners of the firm. How do they actually run this business? And if that's one piece of advice I'd give myself, is that. And really, it's something that I heard a couple of times recently from a few other people, is that your first experience as an employee, the smartest thing you can do is talk to the owner, like, and ask them, and try to figure out what problems he's solving, not just for the immediate clients, but also from the marketing perspective, from the sales perspective, from the business building perspective, because all of those things, you seeing them and understanding them, will help you a lot to grow your career, whatever it is that you're going to do.
That's so valuable. I empathize with that myself as someone who was working just as a good employee somewhere. I felt like I knew what I was doing with podcasting, and then you get a little naive and excited, and you're like, I'm gonna go do my own business now, and then you get slapped in the face with, oh, just kidding. There's a million things that you don't know, and now you're questioning everything that you thought you said you could do, right? So,
Yeah.
for me, it kind of caused some moments of, imposter syndrome at time, right? So you're thinking like, I know how to do this thing, but why am I suddenly struggling in a different way with it? Have you ever had that experience, and how did you fight through it, especially as someone who's trying to be like, negotiating and strong, but maybe have some doubts in the back of your head, like, how do we do the business side of this too?
um of course I've had it. Who hasn't, right? But I guess I'm just too stubborn to give up. And it's funny because, intellectually I understand that the business that I'm building is not the easiest to build, is not the most profitable to build, but it's something that I feel passionate about, and that's why I just keep going no matter what, right? And have there been situations when things weren't looking as bright as I'd like them to? Yes. But to me, it's like, like I said, I'm probably one of the most persistent people on this planet. Like, if I need to pee a hole through a rock, I will. And that's, sometimes it feels like that's what I've been doing with this business. But in all seriousness, it's really about the work that we do, because the results, there are always going to be people more successful. There are always going to be people richer than you. Something tells me that Elon Musk's, when he wakes up in the morning, he also thinks that, do I really deserve all this? It's, and he understands that, what he's got today may very well be different, a year from now. But he takes the pleasure out of what he's built. He takes he's got the self-respect to, and I guess the the humility, really, to see things in perspective. And that's what I'm always also trying to do, because, again, I'm is what I'm building, the best business in the planet? No, but we've helped a ton of people. We've helped thousands of business owners protect their brands. We've talked with tens of thousands of entrepreneurs, and it's quite something for me to be proud of. Let's put it that way.
No, it's definitely something to be proud of. And when I think back to the businesses that are successful in the long game or maybe don't make it, it is that persistence. I think back to the story of just even Walt Disney himself, like how persistent he was to build
Yeah.
his business in a time when nobody believed him. And, he's got like a few bucks, he's going on a train, he's trying to open a studio, like all these things. People are telling him, no, 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 but he's like being persistent. So, that's why I think, in alignment with kind of diving into the brand and the Disney side of our conversation, I think that persistence and that ability to build something so great that you have something you feel worthy of standing for and standing up for is really the tenet of the beginning of a successful business journey. So, talk to me a little bit about how the concept of intellectual property ties into building that kind of strong brand identity. And just like Disney, they're always about it. Like, what makes the brand so strong that it's worth fighting for and giving that persistence, in your opinion?
Yeah. So first of all, in the beginning, you work for the brand, then the brand starts working for you, and that's the craziest thing about the brand that no, few people realize the power of, because when you go to a store and buy a toothpaste, how much time, how much mental energy do you spend deciding which brand of toothpaste you're going to buy? Yeah, for most people it's zero, because we just keep buying the same brand we've always been buying, probably the same stuff we've gotten since we were children. And there's so many products that we buy exactly the same way, right? The phones that we buy, the shoes that we buy, there's a ton of it. And the drinks we buy, the pop we buy, right? And talking about sneakers, Nike's a great example. The value of the whole company is around $97 billion. The brand, just the brand, right? Not the sneakers, not their shirts, not their factories, not their employee, just the brand, just the name, the swoosh, and just do it. That's worth 47 out of 97. It's more than half, right? Or almost half. I think my math.
So
Yeah,
just for like the essence of the brand, like the
yeah,
logo, the trade,
yeah,
the
yeah.
slogans, like it's worth that much.
Yeah, and here's why. You take a white t-shirt that costs half a dollar, you put a swoosh on it, and you sell it for $30 like this. And that's really what's the essence of their business. Their t-shirts are no different than any other t-shirts out there. But because they have a swoosh, because they have Just Do It on them, people are happy to pay a lot of money. And, bringing this back to Disney, yeah, okay, he was, one of the first who built that idea with Disneyland. But it's no longer the one park with all those attractions. There's a lot of them, but still parents from all over the world have this dream, and their kids have this dream to one day go to Disneyland, right? Why? Because of the brand, not because there's something special about this roller coaster or that roller coaster. And that's what makes the brand so valuable. And that's why it makes it so important for you to own the brand that you're building. Because if you don't own it, you don't even have a brand, right? It's not that you don't own the brand, you don't have a brand. Because until you can legally stop your competitors from using your brand to sell their stuff, it's not a brand. It's just something you would like to have as your brand. It only becomes a brand once you have the legal monopoly over it.
That's very valuable because there are folks out there who feel that, oh, maybe investing in their brand or spending time building it is a passive thing. Like it'll just happen over time, or it's not worth spending the money to build the brand in the beginning. Let's just focus on delivering the service, delivering the product or whatever, right? But you saying like, hey, listen, if you don't have a brand, you don't have a real business, if you don't have a strong IP,
you're building someone else's brand, really.
mm,
The successful entrepreneurs, especially those who've made their mistakes in the past and learned the hard way, they know how to do this right. And I'll give you a couple of examples from completely different eras, but they're all about the same thing. Number one is Coca-Cola, right? They filed their first trademark in 1892. 1892 was the year when they were selling 9 drinks a day. I call it a lemonade stand with a dream, right? They incorporated the company, and they realized that, hey, if we are going to treat this thing as a business and not as a lemonade stand, we have to do what is right for the business. And they realized that owning the brand will be the most valuable part of this whole operation. And so now their brand is worth, just the brand itself, over $80 billion, right? There's a reason they did it, right? Because they knew that without a brand, nothing else mattered. So that's example number one. Example number two is, do you know this scooter rental company, Bird?
I've heard of it. There's a few scooter rental companies, but yeah, that one sounds
exactly
okay, right?
Exactly. Right, because there's a few of them, and so they decided, hey, we're going to be that rental scooter company, and I don't remember the year when they did that, but I remember the date. So they started the company on September 1st, and they went out and filed their trademark on September the 13th. So it was one of the very first things they did, long before they had any scooters to rent, long before they had the big team to pay salaries to. That was one of the very first things they did. And the reason, again, they did that is because they knew that without owning that brand, there's going to be a lot of other scooter companies that are going to be renting out their scooters. And what if, like, imagine this, if two companies had scooters that were called Bird, like this, it makes the whole thing unoperable, right? The only way this works is because they can stop anyone else from offering scooters for rent that have a name similar to theirs or a logo similar to theirs. That's why it's so important. And again, these guys did it the right way, because the easiest way to trademark your brand, the best time to do it is before anyone knows about it.
Okay,
Right?
to speak to that, because there is a little bit of a Disney story to that too, because similar, maybe not, but before anyone knew that Walt Disney and his brother were going to build the Magic Kingdom and like all the parks in Florida, they were buying pieces of land under different business entities and different business names. So nobody could look at these plots of land and determine, oh, wow, like Disney's opening up a new theme park. He was kind of using fake company names to do it so that when it finally came time to open the parks, nobody was going to steal his idea of taking this massive plot of land and opening the next theme park. So before he even had like the designs fully fleshed out, they were doing that. So I wonder, it's not exactly the same, but it's similar. It's like the time to do it is before everyone knows.
Yeah, so I didn't know about this story, but Apple is doing exactly the same thing with their IP. So
Mm.
Apple, what they do typically is they file their trademarks in some obscure jurisdictions under some obscure company names. And the reason they do it is because there's this thing called conventional priority, and it gives you 6 months during which you can backdate your applications in other countries to that date when you filed your first one. And so the reason they do it is because when you file a trademark in the US, for for example, that becomes public information, right? And a lot of people know what it is, and a lot of people monitor what is Apple up to, right? So if you see all those articles out there, Apple just filed this patent, Apple just filed this trademark, and they're trying to figure out what it's going to be, right? And but that buys them an extra 6 months of doing it in a quiet, right? And there's value to that. There are people who say, well, ideas are worthless. No, ideas are not worthless. Ideas not executed are, not as valuable, of course. But why would you execute on a worthless idea? That makes no
Exactly.
sense either. Yeah.
Well, also, Disney is hailed for its exemplary approach to protecting and leveraging its own IPs as well. And you were telling me you did some research and you found out like the number of how many that they actually had. What was that about?
Yeah, so I had to do the search again. I brought it up, so I'm going to look at my other monitor. Yeah, so Disney only in US only, right? And you do trademarks on a per country basis. So in other countries, they own, other trademarks. US alone, they filed 6,600 trademarks, so 6,627 trademarks, of which 2158 are still live. So they let 4,400 trademarks die. Some of them they didn't need anymore, some of them they couldn't protect anymore, but they still own over 2,000 active trademarks, right? The very first one was Mickey Mouse as a logo, right? They got Silly Symphony, they got Pinocchio, they got Tinkerbell, they got Walt Disney Presents, Disneyland, like the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And it's not a coincidence that they own so many trademarks, because really their entire business is about branding, right? Their entire business model is around owning those brands that, it's one thing to sell tickets to movies and, tickets to the parks, but the most money is made by selling merch. The most money is made by doing licensing deals. What can you license if you don't own what it is that you're hoping to license? That, why would you, how can you sell merch if the fluffy costs, 30 cents to make, but with the tag, you go out there and sell it for $20, right? Like with all, like there's so much you can do with proper use of intellectual property. And these guys more than others understand this, because they want to be able to have, and really this is what IP is. It's about giving you a legal monopoly over a limited monopoly, right? So with trademarks, it's a brand in connection with specific products for a limited time. With copyright, it's it's also limited in time and how you can use it. And this is why investing in IP makes so much sense, because a lot of entrepreneurs are like, well, I want passive income. I want passive income. Great. Well, that's what IP does. That's what gives you passive income. But it only gives you passive income if you bother to buy the lottery ticket that's going to give you that passive income, right? And of course, when you start the business and you come up with a name or a logo or something, the value of that brand is nothing, because nobody knows you. The brand means nothing to anybody. It maybe has a potential value, so it's up to you to build that up. But again, it only makes sense if you own what it is that you're trying to build the value of. So it's kind of hand in hand thing, right? And
Oh,
so,
it is. And the other part too is like you said, oh, ideas are actually worth something. I mean, Disney wouldn't have spent all that money and investment on how the 6,000 whatever IPs that they had invested in and secured if those ideas didn't mean anything. And honestly, from a lawyer perspective, I had a question for you because I wonder what your thoughts are. But one big IP that happened back in the kind of beginning era of Bob Iger as CEO is the Star Wars merger, acquisition, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what the legal term is for when somebody buys an IP and becomes part of that corporate entity or whatever, right? But I'm sure those negotiations must have been kind of hard. And like, George Lucas, this is his life, his story, his passion. Like, let's pretend you were in the room when those negotiations were happening, how would you advocate for George Lucas, and what kind of questions should somebody be asking if a big company like that is coming in and saying, hey, we like what you're doing, we're gonna buy your IP, but like you're like, whoa, hold the brakes, let's make sure this is a good deal, right?
So I'm glad you brought it up, because that deal with Star Wars, 100% of it was about IP. Like that's what's bought and sold. It's the right to use the name, it's a right to use the imagery, it's a right to create sequels, prequels, whatever it is that they're gonna do, the right to sell merch. All of that is really something that's built out of the air. It's just the legal monopoly that Lucasfilm had, and they decided to monetize it by allowing Disney to do something with it. Right? I don't know the details of that deal, so I'm not going to pretend that I, actually know the specifics. But the reason it worked, and it, I'm sure it worked for everyone there, because everyone, like, I don't necessarily like the new films.
Yeah, we have thoughts on that, but still, at the end, at least it seems like it was a win-win for each party. But yeah, who knows?
Disney made a lot of money. They made a lot of money. Everyone made a lot of money, right? And I don't know if Lucasfilm by themselves would have done much better, in terms of the movies. So, this is a kind of a hypothetical that's irrelevant at this point. But what's not irrelevant is that this deal is only possible because Lucas owns it. Because if they didn't own it, Disney could have just taken it. But so that's one part of the side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that if they didn't own it and Disney took it, it also meant that anyone else could have taken it. And so the value for Disney would have been significantly lower, because if anyone can make Star Wars films, Star Wars merch, Star Wars, anything, it loses exclusivity, and exclusivity is what people are wanting to pay money for.
So let's speak to that exclusivity and more of those kind of strategies. So for businesses that are just starting to really build their brands, what initial steps would you recommend that they take to establish and protect their IP if they're trying to go down that route?
Yeah. So the first thing you need to figure out is what brands you actually have, right? It's whether it's a brand name, the name of the company, the name of the product, the name of the service, whether you have a logo that's valuable, whether you have taglines. And what I usually recommend is you write them down, all of them. Like everything you can come up with that you use in your business, just write them all down. And then sort them based on which ones it would hurt you the most to lose. Because some of them you're like, I mean, I can live with that, not a big deal. Some of those you'd be pretty upset, and some of those you'd be like, that's the end of the business, right? And so you rank them from the worst to lose to the okay to lose. So that's the first thing you do. The second thing you do is you figure out where, because as I mentioned, trademarks are done on a per country basis, and usually you start with your home country. Then you look at countries where you expect to have a lot of sales, a lot of revenue coming from. Then you look at countries where you're going to have a lot of expenses, like if you have a branch there or an office, or you're going to target your ads to that country. That's your kind of third layer. And the fourth layer is something that a lot of people don't realize, is that if you make your physical products overseas, even if you don't plan to sell your stuff there, like, okay, let's say China, right? Like you have your plushies done in China. You don't necessarily have to plan to sell your plushies in China, but if someone else trademarks your brand in China, they can stop you from exporting your own plushies that you paid for from China to where you're planning to sell them, because the act of exporting is considered trademark infringement, right? And so those kind of are the main considerations: the what and the where, right? And when you have that list, then really it becomes a matter of the timing and the budget, right? And so you probably want to start with the most important one in your home country. Just do that first. That's a must, right? And as the business unfolds, as the business grows, as you prove your business model, as you start getting some traction, you start getting a few extra dollars, then you start expanding your brand portfolio. Disney didn't, like, Walt didn't go out there and file 6,000 trademarks, right?
Right.
First of all, he didn't have all those brands, but even if he did, like it just was not a economically viable decision. But what he did is he looked at, what's the most important thing for me here? Mickey Mouse.
Right.
Let's go trademark that. Disneyland, let's trademark that, right?
Well, it also comes from probably his experience of the negative experience, which is Mickey Mouse wasn't his first character. Like, he had a character before, and that character was taken by what now became Warner Brothers or whatever. And that's exactly what you just said. Like, Warner Brothers wouldn't have had the initial success that it had in theory, like, just to stick to the story, if it hadn't, used the idea that Walt had come up with to come pitch to them. So no wonder they're so gung ho about IPs and trademarks and protecting their brand, like, yeah, like he almost lost everything because of that, just because of an idea, one drawing,
Yeah.
So
that's
for
how
me,
it works.
that's how it works. But I wanted to ask a follow-up. Like, let's say you are a marketer in a service-based business. You're a marketing agency, less products, more of those ideas. What are some examples of things that could be trademarked in a scenario like that?
Well, like I mentioned, the name of the product, the service, the company, the logo, and the tagline. So I'll give you my example. But my personal,
Okay.
we're a service-based company, right? We offer trademark registration services. The name is Trademark Factory, right? So I've trademarked the name in multiple countries, right? We have it in U.S., in Canada, in Brazil, in Mexico, in New Zealand, like a few other countries. I've trademarked the taglines. We have several taglines, like, if it's remarkable, it's trademarkable. If it's worth promoting, it's worth protecting. That's the kind of stuff that I feel resonates with our audience. That's why we trademark this, which I trademark those in US and Canada because those two are our main markets, right? But I never bothered to trademark the logo because, to me, the logo is not what people remember about us. It's not what they recognize us by, right? So if I had to change the logo, not that big of a deal. And because we own the name, nobody can just, take the logo and use it exactly. They'd have to, modify it anyway. So that was a very conscious decision, right? And that goes to where and what, right? Because again, the name is the first thing I did before we had a website, before we had any success, before we had a customer. I had those trademarks filed because I knew that I didn't have a business that offers trademark registration services if I didn't own my freaking trademark, right?
That's so true.
Right, and so it served me well because we were able to stop domain name infringement, social media infringement, all of that wonderful stuff.
I wonder if folks who are, let's say, even starting a podcast should maybe trademark the name of their podcast, because I see that podcasts are being bought out by network television and big companies like that. So I don't know what the legalities of that look like, but that's something to think about. I feel like if someone's listening to this and going, I have a really great show idea name and I want to trademark that. I don't know if it's the
So
same. Maybe if you had an LLC and then as a result of, you doing work out of that LLC, then you could like trademark it.
look, I guess the answer to that is you ask yourself three questions. First of all, is this a business or is this just a fun thing that I do? Right? If it's the fun thing that I just do, you don't need a trademark. Right? If it's a business, then you ask yourself a second question. If the business is as successful as I hope it will be, will I still be operating under the same brand 2-3 years from now? The reason you frame this question that way is because trademarking is a long process. It takes about 1.5 years in the US, about 4 years in Canada. So if you know that even if the business is successful and you're not going to use that same brand, there's no reason wasting your time and money trying to get a trademark that will be protecting nothing by the time you get it, right? So you ask yourself that question: will I still use the same brand? Will I still say, offer products and services under that brand 2-3 years from now? If the answer to that is yes, then you ask yourself a third question. Assuming the business is successful, assuming I'm offering those products and services under that same brand 2-3 years from now, will the brand make it any easier for me to find clients, sell to clients, retain clients, and get better team members who want to work for me? If your brand is, again, in the best case scenario, if your brand is going to do any of those things, then go and trademark it today. If you say probably not, nobody is going to care about that brand, then I would say don't trademark that, but go back to the drawing board and come up with a brand that's actually going to help you do at least something. Because think about it, if you think Disney, right? Like politics aside, right? But assuming you find working for Disney something that's desirable to you, right? You're an animator or you're whatever, right?
Right.
And you've always wanted to work for them. You are the one who's going to be lining up to work for them, right? They're not going to be chasing you. You're going to be chasing them. Why? Because they have an established brand. It's like developers, programmers who dream of working for Google for the exact same reason. And they can probably be paid less by Google than they would have been paid by someone else, because Google knows that they've got a brand that allows them to attract the best talent, right? Why? Because of the brand. Because they know that once that brand is on their resume, they can work there for a year or two. They can, they're all set with their career, right? That's what the brand does. So it's not just people buying the same toothpaste. It's also people wanting to work for you. So on the business side. Yeah.
Well, thank you for answering that, because as someone who's helping folks, develop their podcast, it is a question that sometimes comes up when they are going to go ahead and start their show or whatever. Like, is this something that can be trademarked? Da 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 da. So definitely very helpful points on that end to kind of go through that thought process that you discussed. But what I'm interested in is your own story of like going back to that. So you were a lawyer and now you're doing this whole business, and I'm sure that pivot, that transition to build the brand that you're building now wasn't something that necessarily happened overnight. So what inspired you to take that leap, and how did you kind of push through to make it the brand that it is now and make it feel and have that, and sense of, wow, this is a real thing, like I, as a client now, I'm attracted to it. Is there some things that you do specifically that have kind of taken you to that point?
Well, as they always say, overnight success, 10 years in the making, right?
Right.
So I moved to Canada from Russia in 07, had to go back to law school, did my 3 years of law school in Canada, and finished top of my class in half the courses and top 10 in the remaining ones, and sent out my resumes to pretty much every law firm in Canada that had some intellectual property department, and got a grand total of 0 offers. Nothing, right? And that was massively frustrating. Like, it was probably the most frustrated I've ever been in my life. And that's when I discovered Rich Dad Poor Dad by Rob Kiyosaki. So I read that book, and I'm like, you know what? If I can start my own law firm, knowing what I know, again, and back in the day, I thought that knowing what I know was limited to, just if I know law, I can be a successful business owner. Right. I said, let's give it a shot. So I gave it a shot. And very quickly, it really didn't take me very long to realize that something was missing from this business, namely clients. Without clients,
we knew it. We got to pay our bills. We're missing the money part here.
yeah. And so very quickly I started doing both, right? The sales, marketing, and the client work. And then I realized that I can't do both well at the same time. That one or the other was suffering. When I was focusing on the client work, I didn't have the time to do the marketing and sales, so we didn't have enough clients coming in. And if I put more of my focus on marketing and sales, then I could miss some details in the client work, and that suffered. And so I realized, okay, I need to start building a team. I needed to get some help. And then I asked myself, which of the two do I want to give up? Do I want to give up the lawyering, or do I want to give up the businessing? And
okay.
I went with giving up the lawyering, because I realized that part is a lot easier to duplicate, to replace. There are a lot of great trademark attorneys, trademark agents, paralegals who understand, who can be trained to just do the legal stuff. There are textbooks. But I knew that I had the vision for Trademark Factory that no one had. And really that's what that's what brought me here. I remember in 2013, this is when I really came up with this idea of Trademark Factory. I went to my very first Trademark Association meeting in Dallas, Texas. And if you can imagine one room with 10,000 trademark attorneys from around the world, that's what it is. Like, I'm not exaggerating. I think it was 10.5 thousand trademark attorneys that year. And I went there absolutely terrified because I'm just a guy who just moved to Canada, just finished law school, like the guy who just started his firm, and I'm supposed to somehow make them remember what I had to offer to the world. And so I thought, okay, what's the craziest thing I can do to offer around trademarks? And I thought, well, why don't we do free comprehensive trademark search that will tell you exactly whether your brand is trademarkable or not before you spend any money? Why don't we give you one flat fee that's going to cover everything from start to finish, so that you don't have to worry about how much the whole thing is going to cost, right? Because the norm is you pay a little bit of money and then they milk you as the process
the bills
unfolds.
start rolling in.
Yeah, and the harder they work, the more you end up spending, right? I thought, why don't we offer them one flat fee that covers everything? And why don't we offer them 100% money back guarantee that if your trademark doesn't go through, you get all your money back, right? And I went with this idea to that Trademark Association meeting. We launched the website 2 days before I flew to Dallas. I printed my business cards, we launched the website, and I go and talk to those people. Probably talk to 3, 4, 500 people, like one-on-one with, speed networking and, the drinks and stuff like that. Every single one of them told me I was crazy. I was nuts, that this couldn't be done. That, this, like, what do you mean flat fee? What do you mean money back? But you spend the time doing the work. Like, why would you give the money back? And I listened to all that. And the more people I hear telling me that I'm crazy, the more I'm like, I'm doing exactly the right thing. I'm on exactly the right path, because I knew that this was something that entrepreneurs want. And I knew that these guys are not going to catch up quickly. So I'll have enough time to build around this idea, to build a reputation, build the business, build the client base. Like we've got a ton of 5-star Google reviews. We've got a lot. We've done over, I think, over 4,000 by now. Trademarks. We've got a 99.3% rate of success. All of that is insane in terms of metrics compared to the averages, right? I mentioned 99.3% is our success rate. The average success rate overall in the US is 51.7.
Wow.
So, and the
Come
reason
on.
is,
And they thought you were crazy.
and they still think I'm crazy, which is great. I love it, right? Because I mean, look, they've got infinitely more resources than I did, and truth be told, probably a lot of them still have infinitely more resources than I still have now. But the beauty of this is that, and this ties back to to how you started this interview. It's personal to me. It's important for me to give entrepreneurs what I think is the best thing we can give. Because look, the number of times we would hire a marketer who, to help us grow the business, grow our reach, who would say, you know what, why don't you just offer like a low end entry level package that, you'd get people in the door, sell them something, and then you just keep upselling. Like, I'm not interested in this. Like, I know we can do this, but I don't want to sell shitty service. I don't want to do the bait and switch, because this is the stuff that I've been fighting against all my life, right? And
Right.
like, I hear this all the time, and I'm like, nope, not gonna do this. And I guess, there are people who resonate with this, and who think that that's the right way to do this, who want to be treated this way, and they become our clients, and they become the most loyal clients we've ever had. And there are some people who say, you know what, I'd rather pay $69 to some website and hope that it sticks. And when we tell them how much we charge, like, you guys are nuts. We're like, sure, that's fine. you want to do this, and you want to spend 2 years of your life and not get a trademark in the end. We warned you. But
Right.
there's only so much I can do. But to me, it's important that we are doing the things that I think are right. And again, we have an audience of people who appreciate this, and some people who don't.
Well, I mean, the folks that do appreciate that you are sticking to your word, you're being transparent and pricing, and you're trying to deliver the final effect that they want, like reasonably, like by saying this is what we're going to do, and if we don't, we're refund. I mean, that is a little that is a disruptor in the business of what you're doing in a positive way, and I think that there have been, I'm sure, people who have succeeded as a result of you working with them. So is there a story that you can share of a success story that you can share that really has like a nice place in your heart of like, wow, I really helped this person, one of my clients. And if would you like to share it with us?
Sure. I mean, there's so many of them, but one of them involved us having to reach out to one of the biggest apparel companies. I've actually named it in this interview before, but I'm not going to repeat it.
Yes. We don't know who they are.
No, they make a lot of sneakers.
Yeah.
And so they had so we filed for a brand that was very similar to one of the brands that they owned. And my guy wanted to do just apparel, and their brand was for shoes, but it's the same class of goods and
Mm.
services. And so Trademark's office says no. And what I did is I reached out to that big company, and we got their consent. We entered the agreement. We got their consent, and my client's trademarks went through, right? And that was one of the things I remember. The other one was, I remember, with a lot less enjoyment, but the client is ecstatic about it. It took us 7 years to do his trademark.
7 years?
With so much back and forth between us and the Trademarks office and some other companies that we had to use, get consent from and fight the trade. 7 freaking years. We lost so much money on this client. I'm even afraid to calculate this because it's a flat fee, right? And so we
Right.
just keep doing the work. And at the end of the 7th year, we got him the trademark registration. I'm like, there, now you have it. You can actually
Here
see
you
the
go.
testimonial. Here you
Oh
go.
my
And the
God.
guy is like, how was I as a client? I'm like, well, we enjoyed
Well,
working for you, but our bank account didn't.
but I mean, that just proves why you're genuinely invested in getting the
Yeah.
final product that you're saying. Because I mean, I'm sure I don't know any other lawyer that's like after 7 years, it's like, okay, I guess I'm not making any money off of this. I guess but we'll still keep doing it, kind of a thing. I don't know.
Because look, to me, what's going through my head is exactly that conversation that I had with my dad
Yeah.
when
Wow.
oof, when he came into the room and said, what you're going to do. And I'm like, and we just kept appealing and appealing, and it's just a habit of mine now just to go and keep fighting until I get the result that I want.
Right. Looking ahead, what kind of legacy do you hope to leave through your work and, your team as well in intellectual property law and brand protection? Like if someone were to look back at what you did and maybe have a podcast conversation about it, what would you hope that they would have to say?
um we actually call it, so we call this, I'm going to give you a slightly longer answer. I hope so. I hope I can do that. So we call it the power of 4 gives. Basically, what Trademark Factory does, right? So we give you the free search, we give you the flat fee, we give you the money back guarantee. But the 4th give is the stuff that's the most important to me, is that we give a damn, right? So if there's one thing I want Trademark Factory to be remembered by, is as a company that does trademarks, but that actually gives a damn about your brand, about your business, about what you're trying to do with your business. Because filing trademarks is easy, especially when you know what you're doing. It's but even if you don't know what you're doing, it's easy to file a trademark. But what makes the difference is when you actually understand what you're doing, and when you present things the way that will maximize the chances. But that's technical. The important stuff to me is that if you don't understand the business of the entrepreneur, you're doing them a disservice. We've seen so many trademark applications that were filed for wrong products and services because whoever filed them didn't bother to really ask the questions. What are you trying to do? What do you think this business is going to look like 2-3 years from now? And they file with something that has nothing to do with what they're trying to do, right? And this goes back to, like I said, giving a damn. Because to me, the coolest thing, so I moved to Dubai a couple of years ago, and but before I did that, so the coolest thing for me was to see some of the brands that we trademarked in real life, like whether it's a company truck or a product in a store. I would see them. I'm like, to me, it's almost like it's my freaking baby. They came up with it, but like I know that I was a little part of that success. To me, that's the best part, right? And so if you're asked about the legacy, I think to me it's I want us to be remembered as someone who actually gave it down.
And that's so awesome, like to be able to look up and be like, wow, something that I did, it exists, it has meaning, it's there, and you had a small part to play in helping somebody's dreams come true because business is personal at the end of the day. It is blood, sweat, and tears. It's something that somebody always thinks about, and an entrepreneur that's taken those times and sacrifices to really build it. Like once they get to that point where they finally have an idea worth being made into something, hopefully they end up with a partner just like you to take care of that idea and make sure it finally takes that last step to come to fruition. So I think that's really, really awesome. Okay, so I think before we end our conversation, we're going to switch to do just a fun Disney themed rapid fire question segment if you're down for that. These are very easy questions. They're not trivia. They're just general thoughts. So are you down for that?
Sure.
Let's try.
Come on, everybody. Here we go. Off to Question Land.
All right. So, if you were to have coffee with Walt Disney himself, what would you ask him?
What was the I'd ask him what was the moment when he knew for sure that he's built something successful. Like so that's one thing, like at which point did he knew that I made it? And the second question was would have been, what was the most important pivot that led to that success? Like what was the decision or the thought or something that made him go one way, not the other, that he attributes to that success?
I sure would like to know too, because if we can learn any of that stuff and have a business that runs 100 years later that's just as that successful, wouldn't that be nice, right?
Yep.
Okay, another fun one. Speaking of IP, right? Is there a Disney character as a kid or an IP that you admired, and what was it and why?
So look, when I was a kid, there wasn't really that much Disney back in
That makes
Soviet
sense.
Union.
Well, maybe now
I
or just in
remember
general.
my grandma took me to Bambi, to see Bambi. She, for whatever
She took
reason,
you to
she
the
was a
most
big fan of.
depressing movie to watch as a kid. It's the one where the mother dies.
Yeah, so I don't remember very much of it, but I know that my daughter, like my eldest daughter,
Right.
she's turned 18 recently, and she's a massive fan of okay, I'm blanking out.
It's okay. I can help you out.
What's this blue thing? Your Disney character. What's his name?
Stitch?
Stitch. Yes. Like she's
Stitch. We
got
said it at the same
dozens
time.
of them. She's got dozens of them in her room, and it's always fun how different they can be, and
That's
I
awesome.
yeah.
I mean, for
So
me, I actually recently went to the place in Hawaii where they were inspired to film the movie Lilo and Stitch, like the little town that the directors based it off of. So if she likes Stitch, you can go to the island of Kauai. There's a town called Hanapepe, and that's where the directors drew parts of scenes of the movie to actually create Lilo and Stitch. And there's a mural there with Lilo and Stitch and saying like welcome to the real town or whatever. So just a fun fact. And you can check out my episode on it later if you want. If she'd like it.
give me 1 second. I want to show you something else. Hang on.
Yes, tell me.
I should have it somewhere here. Where is that? I can't see it. So anyway, I also have the characters somewhere. We
Yes.
just made a small move, but
Oh,
from the up, like
yes, from
the
moving
old
up.
man, and
Oh,
I
that's so
love
cute.
that. And to me, like I used to have it hanging near me.
Mm,
I don't know where it is right now, but I used to use it as a reminder that every day is the day, and you want to
wow.
live your life so that you don't regret the day that has nothing for you to remember. So
Yes.
that's another one.
I
Yeah.
I have a similar quote that I have up. I have a quote from Walt Disney that says, "It always seems impossible until it's done." So that's kind of my little reminder that I have up there. So I'm glad we share that in common. Okay,
Yeah.
this is a fun one. All right, this is more imaginative, okay? So let's
Okay.
say you woke up and you were plopped into the world of Disney things, okay? And somebody you had to negotiate a dispute with a Disney villain as a lawyer. Which Disney villain do you think you'd have the best chance of beating in an argument and saving the day for that movie?
I think you got me with that. I um hmm.
I may have gotten you, but it's just thinking about if you were a lawyer and you had to argue or dispute something on the behalf of the hero to help them and save
Right.
them from the villain, who would it be?
Oof. I think I probably want to go with someone from Monsters U,
Mhm,
uh
mhm.
because they feel, to me, they're like they're, they're like they seem to be reasonable enough to understand logical arguments, which is usually what
Okay,
law is
okay,
about, right?
okay.
And I could probably convince them that that's the best part about advocacy, right? It's
Right.
about, really, there's a lot of parallels between uh, movies and
Right.
law,
Mhm.
because they're both about the one same thing, the story, right?
Mhm.
When you have a court case, whether it's the case about someone who steals IP, whether it's a case about President Trump, or anything in between, right?
Right.
It's always boils down to the story, and it boils
Mm.
down to which story does the judge like better, the story
Mm.
of one side or the story of the other side. And once the judge makes that decision, the judge usually finds the law to back that up. Right? It's not supposed to be that way, but it's the way it works. Right?
Right.
They listen to a bunch of stuff that lawyers say on both sides, the motions, the objections, all of that wonderful stuff. But what it boils down to is the story always, right? And so, as Walt was an amazing storyteller,
Right.
the same thing happens in a courtroom. Your
Mm.
job is to build a story that the judge is going to buy, and this is something I've said more than once, in my legal career, to entrepreneurs. It doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. It doesn't matter what's legal and what's illegal. The only thing that matters is, can you present your set of facts so that the judge likes your story better, so that you look as the good guy and the other guy looks like a villain, right?
Yes.
Because the other side is going to do exactly the same thing, just the other way around, right? And if you can't create a plausible, a believable story that makes you a great guy who has been wronged by this bad villain. And if you can't create a story that this guy took advantage of you, you've got nothing to do in a courtroom. You're going to lose, right?
Right. In
And
my
so,
opinion, I think that, to just tie that up, I really feel like if you know the story of the movie Little Mermaid, she signs her voice away to Ursula. I feel like
yeah.
Little Mermaid, she needed a lawyer. She needed to review that contract before she just signed her rights away. She could have used you there.
Like you bring up an amazingly important point that most entrepreneurs disregard, is that contracts are more powerful than anything else, right?
Mhm.
Yes, you have default provisions of copyright law, of patent law, trademark law, whatever law. All of those are great because they give you initial rights, but you can sign them away like this. And that signature on the contract that you didn't bother to read is going to be more powerful than anything else. I've had so many people come to me and say, well, Andrei, can you help me, get my rights back to this thing that I wrote because they're doing something to my book that I didn't want them to do. And I'm like, what's your angle on this? Well, they say, I wrote this book. And say, yes. But then I signed this contract, but it doesn't matter because the law says that I own it because I wrote it. I was like, no, once you sign this little piece of paper that says that you assign the rights to someone else, you're done.
Right.
So signing contracts without reading them is the stupidest thing we can do as entrepreneurs, because it might be not as important when you agree to some to a website to post some stuff, but if you're discussing stuff that actually matters to your business, make sure you get it read. So
I don't know if you can see, but I actually found the actual quote unquote contract that Ariel signed. She's like, I
yeah.
hereby grant unto Ursula, the Witch of the Sea, one voice in exchange for blah, blah, blah. She just said, for all eternity, all my rights are signed away. I didn't even read it. Here you go. Here's my signature. Goodbye. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I
it
just
has
thought that was kind of a funny example for that.
Yeah, it has consideration. It has the term. Yeah,
You know,
it almost looks like a valid contract.
almost just quite maybe just a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, Andrei, thank you so much for taking the time to chat bippity boppity and business with me today. If anyone is looking to connect with you in regards to your services, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Two ways, really. If you know you have a brand that you want to protect, go to trademarkfactory.com and request a free call with a strategy advisor. What they're going to do is they're going to jump on a call with you. They're going to ask you all those questions that we need to ask to understand your business, what the brand, your ideas, what you're planning to do. And they're going to be able to help you put that priority stuff that we talked about, right? What do you start with? Where do you start doing that with? How do we make that fit your budget? I've yet to meet a client with an unlimited budget. So, and I've done work for the biggest names in a planet, right? They still have limited budget. So we know. So that's option number one. Just get on that call. They'll help you. They'll answer your questions, and if you feel there's a good fit, they'll help you get started. The second avenue is if you are trying to figure out more about trademarks and you just want to learn. You can go to YouTube. I've posted over 1,000 videos there where I answer pretty much. If you had ever had a question about trademarks, I've probably answered it more than twice. So you go to YouTube and you search for Trademark Factory, and you'll find our channel. You're welcome to subscribe or not subscribe. Just watch the videos. But in all seriousness, if you're a business owner, if you spent a second coming up with a name, coming up with a logo, coming up with a tagline, there's a reason you did that, right? You didn't choose to have a nameless service or a nameless product. There was something that was going through your mind when you said, that's the name I want. And as you're trying to build that business, I'm sure, unless you've got to the point where you're successful enterprise by now, then you probably already have a trademark. But as you're growing, as you're trying to do this thing, I'm sure you have people who don't necessarily believe that what you're doing is valuable, who don't necessarily think you should be spending any money to build the foundations for your business. My advice to you, ignore them. Because those same people, once you've succeeded, will be telling you they've always believed that you're going to be a big success. And don't let them bring you down. Don't let them take away from you that one thing that could become your most valuable asset, right? The one thing that could be worth billions of dollars, right? I don't know. That's the funny thing about those brands that are now worth billions of dollars today. They started with nothing. Coca-Cola being, $9 drink a day business. The every business started with nothing. But the difference is some of them make it big and some of them don't. And those who make it big, if you look at their history, the one thing they do very quickly, if not before launch, very quickly after launch, is they take care of their IP. So that's the one message that I want to leave you with. Your brand is not worthless. Take care of protecting it.
You heard him. Name it, claim it, and go out there and fame it yourself, because you're the only one that can do that for yourself. So thank you so much, Andrei. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again. Trademark Factory. I love being on your show, and I'm hoping your audience will see that this was a useful conversation for them.
Oh yeah, they will, especially if they go out there and they tried to be tempted by some corporate sea witch to sign a contract that they shouldn't. So, now they have the connections to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Andrei.
Cheers.
You've been listening to Bippity Boppity Business. Like what you hear so far? Leave us a review in Apple, or listen to us anywhere you prefer listening to your podcast. Until next time, have a magical day.